should NASCAR have stage break cautions on road course? I know this is something else we've talked about before on this show, and without it, would it be harder for those in the back to advance up?
Well, Kobe, to bounce off of your first point, I think NBC is definitely happy. I couldn't believe it. They only gave the Cup Series a 2.5 hour window. And let me tell you, I'm a Shark Tank fan. I know CNBC has their Shark Tank marathons on Sunday afternoon with the reruns of the shows they've acquired from ABC. I was thinking to myself, the Shark Tank fans are probably going to be upset because there's no way they're going to be able to get this Cup race in, and IndyCar is probably going to be bounced to that channel. Fortunately, it was a clean race, and we saw not a lot of, we saw some single car spins, like you were mentioning with Keselowski, but nothing to cause a caution or anything like that. And, when you talk about stage racing and stage cautions, where I stand on the issue. I don't really see how stage racing has enhanced the product. I think if anything, it's only done more to disillusion the core fan base and push people away. But on road courses in particular, I think this is a much more common sentiment, even from people that maybe like stage racing. Maybe keep the stages, but don't throw the yellow on the road courses. Because one thing that I really missed from the NASCAR that I fell in love with when I was growing up was the strategy aspect. I remember guys not firing up their cars, on the command at Sonoma because they were already focused on saving fuel. And, the days of that are over now that you have two planned cautions, you know exactly when they're going to come. I think that's, something that's taken away from the strategy aspect and the watchability of these. I don't even know if that's a real word there, but it takes away from the viewers' enjoyment of watching a road course race in NASCAR. And I think regardless of how you feel about stages, you can't deny that it really does. It's just not a good feeling, to have a close battle, great racing. We saw a lot of great racing today at Watkins Glen, and to have it interrupted by planned cautions. I feel like if we just let the races play out naturally, I think you get a better product, and you wouldn't be disillusioning the fan base like you've been with the stage racing we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and we do have a comment in the chat room from Josh, who was just on the air. He said he thinks that we should lose the stage races and just have them on ovals, if at all. NASCAR is a fan-made sport and needs to be returned to the fans. And if NASCAR keeps stages long term, at least do what IMSA does when they have the endurance rounds awarding the points. Just leave the race green. We can award points, and we don't have to have a caution. So I think that would be a simple fix to the stage problem. And we also have another comment from Josh in the chat room. It's a question for you, Adam, asking, what do you think Dale Earnhardt would think of this?
Oh boy. This should be interesting because, I grew up Dale Earnhardt, so I don't think he'd like stage racing. I don't think he'd like it at all. I think he wants it flat out, going back to where it used to be, no stages, no, full throttle, have a 3 hour race. Oh yeah. Have the race start at 12:30 at 1 o'clock like it used to be back in the day. These 3:30 starts and 4 o'clock starts. No, that's not the way I grew up, and that's not the way a lot of fans grew up. I believe the race at Indianapolis next Sunday starts at 12:30. That's the time it should happen. That's the time it should happen for every single NASCAR race. Easier on the fans, I believe. Kobe, I believe that my colleagues would agree on this. Am I right, guys?
Yeah, well, and Adam, I'm glad you brought that up. That's something I forgot to mention when we were talking about the start times. I think this wouldn't have been a problem. It was getting dark in Nashville for the IndyCar series. With the short window, NBC had already left them between the races. If you start a NASCAR race at noon, I'd like to get noon, but I would even take 1 p.m. If you start at 1 p.m. Eastern time, that gives you 2 extra hours, in case you get a pop-up thunderstorm. It's summertime, it gives you more of a buffer to work with. And it's also, the fans aren't left on their Sunday afternoons waiting. I understand there's the argument that you get the primetime audience coming in towards the end, but I don't think that makes as much of a difference as people think. So I'm with you. I'd like to see the races start earlier as well. And I also remember, getting back to this stage racing debate, I think I randomly hopped on, like, NBC Sports was, they went live on Facebook or something during the 2017 Daytona 500, which was the first Cup race ever with stages. And Parker Kligerman was reading a comment in the chat, and somebody said, I like the stages, but maybe just don't throw the caution and interrupt the race. Maybe just award the points. So that's been an argument ever since stage racing was introduced. So, it's funny to see that coming up again, on the road courses in particular, where it messes up the strategy so much. But, as much as I'm not opposed, or as much as I'm, in principle opposed to the idea of stage racing, the idea of the fact that, the guy who comes across the line to finish the race in seventh, who wins the first two stages, can end up taking away the most points from the race weekend with a seventh place finish. How do you explain that to a casual fan? I think I'd like it better if we didn't interrupt the racing with the stage cautions. So, I think that's a point that, NASCAR is really going to have to consider, especially on the road courses. So I think the cry is only getting louder for them to do something about that.
And we do have another question from Josh. I'll answer that for you right quick, Josh. You're asking, is TV having more control over these start times rather than the series? Unfortunately, that is true, because these TV companies, what they really care about is hitting the ratings. And Ben just talked about that. TV believes if you start later in the day, you'll get that primetime audience. And I also agree with what you said, Ben. I don't really think it matters as much as people think it does. And I think it's super unfortunate that TV started having a bigger say in all of this, because even when I started watching NASCAR in the mid 2000s, I remember all of the Cup races at 1 p.m. and I really enjoyed that. And I think for Sonoma, maybe it might have started at 3, because they were on the West Coast. That was perfectly fine. But most of the races 1 p.m. I thought that was a perfect time. I still had enough time to do what I needed to get done in the mornings and be ready at 1 p.m. for the race. And a lot of the times when I'm waiting at 3:30, 4 o'clock for these races to start today, it feels like I'm just waiting around forever for the race to start. And like today, that short TV window for NASCAR and IndyCar been pushed to 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. I felt like that was super unfortunate. And I'm wondering if the Olympics had a factor in that, because I know they finished up. I believe today was the last day of the Summer Olympics, and we're not gonna have it next year. So yeah, and also we're gonna be utilizing Peacock, NBC, and USA Network, because NBCSN is disappearing. I'm thinking next year with that Olympic coverage, maybe you give Nashville, if they come back, a more friendlier start time, and I think that would be much better for the situation out there